Imagine walking into a soda fountain in the late 1800s, ordering a refreshing glass of Coca-Cola and unknowingly sipping a little extra buzz. Not just the sugar high or caffeine kick. No, we're talking actual cocaine. Yes, the world's most famous soft drink once had an ingredient list that reads less like a family-friendly refreshment and more like the setup for a wild night out. Today, we're diving into how Coca-Cola used to contain cocaine, why people thought that was a great idea, and how the brand managed to become the global giant it is today, right here on History of Food. To understand how cocaine ended up in Coca-Cola, you first need to picture the late 1800s. Medicine was, let's say, experimental. People were putting opium in cough syrups, morphine in teething powders, and alcohol in pretty much anything. If you had a headache, an upset stomach, or even just the Monday blues, your local pharmacist would mix you up a tonic that probably contained more drugs than an entire episode of Breaking Bad. Enter John Pemberton, a Confederate veteran and pharmacist from Atlanta. After being injured in the Civil War, Pemberton developed a morphine addiction, a very common issue at the time. Like many people, he started looking for alternative pain relief. That's when he stumbled upon coca wine, a European drink made by mixing wine with extracts from coca leaves, the very same leaves that give us cocaine. This drink was marketed as a pick-me-up, and even Thomas Edison and Pope Leo XIII were reportedly fans. Inspired, Pemberton decided to create his own version of this miracle beverage. In 1886, Pemberton developed a syrup that combined coca leaf extract with cola nut extract, which contained caffeine. Put them together and, voila, you had the energy drink of the 19th century. He named it Coca-Cola after its 2-star ingredients. The original version contained both cocaine and caffeine, a double whammy of stimulation. And remember, at the time, cocaine wasn't viewed as dangerous. In fact, doctors prescribed it for everything from toothaches to depression. Sigmund Freud himself once sang its praises before eventually realizing it might not be the healthiest daily habit. So to the average consumer in 1886, Coca-Cola wasn't scandalous, it was genius. You could walk into a soda fountain, grab a fizzy drink, and leave feeling energized, alert, and maybe even a little euphoric. What could go wrong? One of the most brilliant moves was how Coca-Cola was marketed. Pemberton and his team promoted it as a temperance drink. In other words, it was positioned as a healthy alternative to alcohol. Remember, the late 1800s were a time when temperance movements were gaining traction, and many Americans were trying to reduce or eliminate alcohol consumption. Coca-Cola was the perfect solution. It was exciting, stimulating, and, best of all, legal, and the marketing worked. People loved it. Coca-Cola fountains popped up everywhere. The drink became not just a refreshment, but a cultural symbol. And nobody seemed all that concerned about the secret ingredient, giving them a little extra spring in their step. Now, let's clear something up. Was Coca-Cola basically liquid cocaine? Not exactly. While the drink did contain cocaine derived from coca leaves, it wasn't a huge amount. Historians estimate that a serving of early Coca-Cola may have contained around 9 milligrams of cocaine. For comparison, a typical recreational dose is much higher. So, drinking Coca-Cola wasn't the same as snorting a line, but it was definitely more stimulating than your average soda today. Still, the idea that you could stroll into a pharmacy and buy a refreshing cocaine-laced beverage is wild enough. By the early 1900s, however, public opinion started to shift. People were beginning to recognize that cocaine might not be the miracle cure it was cracked up to be. Reports of addiction, health issues, and even overdoses were growing. The media began stirring up fear, often with racist undertones, spreading moral panic about cocaine use in cities. At the same time, government regulation of food and drugs was becoming stricter. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 required companies to label ingredients clearly, and that meant Coca-Cola couldn't exactly keep cocaine in the recipe without people noticing. Faced with mounting pressure, Coca-Cola quietly began reducing the amount of cocaine in its formula. By 1929, the company had completely removed the active cocaine from the drink. Here's the twist. Coca-Cola still uses coca leaves in its recipe today. Yep, you heard that right. The company imports coca leaves from Peru, but they're decocainized by a company in New Jersey called the Stepan Company. They remove the cocaine alkaloid and supply the safe extract to Coca-Cola for flavoring. The extracted cocaine, by the way, is then sold to pharmaceutical companies for medical use, such as local anesthesia in surgeries. So technically, Coca-Cola is still tied to coca leaves. It's just a much more legal and less exciting version of the original. Coca-Cola's cocaine connection didn't disappear overnight. In the early 20th century, the company faced lawsuits accusing it of being unsafe and addictive, not just because of cocaine, but because of caffeine. In 1911, the federal government even took Coca-Cola to court in what became known as the Coca-Cola trials, arguing that the drink contained harmful stimulants. The company won the case, but it shows just how much public opinion had shifted. And yet, despite all the controversy, Coca-Cola continued to grow. In fact, the buzz around its ingredients may have only added to its mystique. After all, nothing makes people want a product more than a little scandal. Fast forward to today, and Coca-Cola is one of the most recognized brands in the world. Its association with Santa Claus, polar bears, and summer picnics has all but erased its early reputation as a cocaine-laced tonic. For most people, Coca-Cola is pure nostalgia in a bottle. Few even realize that their favorite soda started as a pharmacy experiment with a questionable kick. Looking back, the story of Coca-Cola is a fascinating reminder of how cultural attitudes towards substances can change. What was once considered medicinal and wholesome is now seen as dangerous and addictive. And what's considered shocking today may be normalized tomorrow. It also shows the power of branding. Coca-Cola managed to take a product that literally contained a controlled substance and transform it into the most family-friendly beverage on the planet. That's some serious marketing magic. Here's the funny part. While Coca-Cola doesn't contain cocaine anymore, it's still not exactly health food. Today's concerns are more about sugar and obesity than narcotics, but the debates around soda are just as passionate. Some people can't imagine life without it, while others avoid it like the plague. In that sense, Coca-Cola is still controversial. It's just swapped one problem ingredient for another. So yes, Coca-Cola once contained cocaine. No, it wasn't turning the entire country into party animals, but it did give the drink an extra jolt that certainly helped its popularity in the early years. Over time, changing laws, science, and public opinion forced the company to drop the drug but keep the name, a clever move that allowed Coca-Cola to distance itself from its scandalous past while building a wholesome image. Next time you crack open a can of Coke, take a moment to imagine its wild origins. A morphine-addicted pharmacist, a recipe combining caffeine and cocaine, and a drink that somehow went from medicinal tonic to Christmas tradition. History is full of strange twists, but few are as deliciously ironic as this one. Thank you for watching.